In Star Trek, a lot of faster-than-light travel is done at warp speeds. In short, this is the use of subspace fields to bend space-time to create an area of compressed space before the vessel, letting it move across distances without actually violating the laws of physics. I've already done a video on one component of this, the dilithium crystal. In short, that's an element applied to a warp reactor of various designs, which controls and regulates the reaction, conveys that charge into warp plasma through its own subspace properties, and then channels that into the nacelles, which then creates the warp bubble. This part of the reaction is pretty common, with even some singularity reactors utilising it as a stabilising element. Aside from this, the biggest part of achieving warp is the supply of energy required. As mentioned, a forced singularity is one potential method of extracting energy. Starfleet has even experimented with artificial micro-protostars as a power source to great success. In early spaceflight, fusion power was enough to achieve limited, minutes-long flight at low warp, but even more power was needed to generate the truly mind-boggling speeds required to explore space within a feasible time frame. For many powers, the most common method of generating power by far is the collision of matter and antimatter, which annihilates, releasing a tremendous amount of energy. While dilithium crystals can eventually fracture and burn out, they can be recrystallized to extend their longevity. However, there are other stores required to continue operating a warp drive, namely warp plasma and deuterium. Now, plasma is less of an issue, as it spends most of its life circulating like blood within a Starship's electroplasma system's grid, powering the vessel. It's only expelled once it has lost its potency, and starships can often refine and generate their own supplies over time, as well as carry ample reserves. The other commodity is the matter and antimatter reserves needed to collide within the warp reactor. Starfleet's preferred brand of space petrol is deuterium, and its less mentioned cousin, the antimatter counterpart, antideuterium. Alongside fictional supercrystals and time-space bending orbs, alloys that are forged to withstand neutron stars, and all sorts of other fantastical materials, I was surprised as a child to learn that deuterium is actually a real thing. And what's more, it's not even that uncommon here on Earth, so let's take a quick look at what deuterium actually is. Hydrogen 2. That's it, 2H. Regular hydrogen is also known as protium when it's trying to be all edgy and cool. A standard hydrogen atom contains one positively charged proton orbited by a single negative electron, while deuterium adds a single neutral neutron to the mix. This forms naturally, and in about 1 cubic metre of seawater, 33 grams of it would be deuterium isotopes. It's even within your own body, us ugly bags of mostly water. However, do not drink it, it's what makes heavy water heavy. The trace amounts are natural, however. It was discovered in 1931 by American chemist Harold Urey, who won a Nobel Prize for this, along with George Murphy and Ferdinand Brickwood. Deuterium is slower to react in chemical reactions than regular hydrogen, which means it's a good isotope to trace when gauging things' ages and geography. It is colourless like hydrogen, however when burned, which it does very easily, it's a pale blue colour. However, it does also glow with an identifiably purple hue when within a fusion reactor. It's also a component of nuclear fusion, where deuterium and tritium, that's hydrogen with 2 extra neutrons, are smushed to release energy, helium and a stray neutron. So as we can see already, deuterium is already considered a promising fuel source for energy production for the same reasons it is favoured in Star Trek. Deuterium by far is not the only element that you can use in a warp reaction. It is merely the most efficient considering its ease of use and abundancy. This means that while much of Starfleet relies on deuterium, it is seldom an expensive commodity, unlike dilithium, which is unreplicatable. In fact, you could easily replicate deuterium on a starship, but it's just not efficient. After all, replicators use power drawn from the warp core, which is fueled by deuterium, so you'd be replicating deuterium by burning deuterium. So, for this end, it's far easier for Starfleet to find a large pocket of hydrogen out there in the galaxy and intake as much of it as they can through Bussard collectors. This deuterium is then refined on board the vessel in a relatively simple process, providing it's not too impure to work with, and then the deuterium is stored in the ship's fuel tank. Alternatively, Starfleet does create deuterium refineries in dense pockets of the resource to collect and purify the hydrogen into a form that is reactor ready. Then a trade tanker or even vessel itself can dock and refuel from these, skipping its own refinement process. What is more difficult, however, is the production or procurement of anti-deuterium, the other end of the reaction needed in a matter-antimatter warp core. We seldom even hear about anti-deuterium, although it does get mentioned occasionally. As the counterpart of deuterium, it is therefore made from an antiproton, antineutron, and an orbiting positron. Because it is antimatter, it needs to be magnetically contained away from the surfaces of its containment pod, as even making contact with its own container will cause an antimatter reaction and boom. While anti-deuterium is not referred to by name very often, it is more commonly referred to simply as antimatter and colloquially used interchangeably in Starfleet, so when they talk about antimatter it's usually this they are talking about. Like deuterium, anti-deuterium is therefore real, but as of yet has not been synthesized in a lab setting. However, this has been cracked in Star Trek's universe, and antimatter generators are present aboard starships and in the late 24th century. However, these facilities do not appear to be on every vessel, with smaller or older vessels having to rely on the transfer of antimatter from larger refineries or cargo rendezvous. With the lack of clarity on this side of the reaction, I suspect that the antimatter is somehow produced through the original deuterium, but antimatter creation is for a separate video because, oh boy, it's a big topic. So, overall, deuterium is an incredibly common resource in Star Trek. Hydrogen nebula, siphoning off hydrogen from gas giants or even stars, heck, even a large amount of heavy water, all contain it. The only trick is refining it, which can take a little time. So sometimes it might be preferable to secure trade-ready and ready-to-go deuterium fuel sources. But really, it's not a concern. Unlike the antimatter, which is still a bit of a faff to create, or dilithium, which has to be mined. Thanks for watching this breakdown on what deuterium is. I've been Rick, and until the next lore video, thanks again, and goodbye.